Since even before the start of the war, Hitler was always very passionate about the so-called superweapons that could bring him his most wanted prize, the 1000-year Reich. Anything colossal in scale was definitely on the table, especially since he was willing to pay very good for his ambitious projects to the head manufacturers of the time. From superplanes to battleships and from super tanks to huge cities, anything was definitely possible for Hitler, and he wanted it all. This being said, we can easily understand now how mega projects hit the drawing board, no matter how absurd some of them seem to us now, and especially how absurd it seemed to some people back in the 1940s. Such a project is what we're going to talk about today, and it was the super heavy tank, the Panzerkampfwagen 8, hilariously named the Mause. It is impossible to consider the Mause and not be impressed by the machine as a feat of engineering, weighing in at 188 tons, as it is the heaviest operational tank ever made by any nation at any time in any war, and was made despite the shortages of raw materials, industrial capacity, and manpower at the time in Nazi Germany. Yet, despite the impressive achievement of making this rolling behemoth, the vehicle stands as a testimony to the total waste taking place in German industries and the inefficiencies inherent in the way in which the tank development was carried out. No amount of awe at the size, weight, firepower, or armor of this beast could disguise the incredible waste of resources it accounted for, nor could it make any difference in the end to the outcome of the war. The Mause as a weapon was simply useless, yet the lessons learned from its development did find uses in other programs, and the very existence of such an enormous machine has inevitably drawn a significant amount of attention. Drawing both awe and fascination in equal measure, the Mause is a complex tank with a lengthy development. Origins of the Panzerkampfwagen 8. Following the invasion of the Soviet Union on the 22nd of June 1941, the German army had quickly gained huge patches of territory and destroyed, captured, or killed large quantity of Soviet troops, supplies, and equipment. Yet, despite the success, the German army was unable to deliver a knockout blow against the Soviets or to capture Moscow by late January 1942. And with Moscow being saved by an increasingly stubborn Soviet defense, it was more than clear that the conflict on Eastern Front was going to be very long and very bloody. As Soviet tanks of increasing quality, armor, and firepower started to reach the front lines in 1942, it was clear that in order for the German forces to maintain an edge in tank combat, they would need a tank that was bigger, more heavily armored, and better armed than anything that they had done before. There was also the need for a heavy tank capable of assaulting heavily defended enemy positions, and since nothing in the German arsenal in spring 1942 was capable of meeting these requirements, long-term plans were being put into place. The origins of the Mause began around this time, as on the 5th of March 1942, a directive was issued to Fried Krupp of Essen for the development of a new heavy tank in the 100-ton class to replace the previous concept of a 72-ton tank, which originated as a project in Rheinsmetall started in 1938. The goal was to have an operational trial vehicle for this 100-ton tank in the shortest possible time and to be ready to show it off in the spring of 1943. 2 weeks later, on the 21st of March, Dr. Ferdinand Porsche was given a separate and independent contract for exactly the same goal, a 100-ton tank. But by May 1942, however, the 100-ton limit was being seen as too conservative, so a 120-ton weight was permitted, with priority placed on achieving the heaviest possible armor and firepower, and with speed not being an important factor. When this work was presented to Hitler at the start of December 1942, he was supportive and ordered the production of a trial vehicle to be ready for operations in the summer of 1943, and with a production of 5 vehicles each month thereafter assembled by Krupp. It is important to note that at this time the Porsche design was known as the Mause and the Krupp design was known as the Tiger Mause, but slowly a dose of reality also started to set in. From an original 100 tons to maybe, if necessary, 120 tons, the weight actually had ballooned to 170 tons, and so some weight actually needed to be stripped off. The easiest way to achieve this was to reduce the amount of steel in the vehicle, which meant reducing the level of protection it offered from 250mm at the front and 200mm on the side to 225mm and 180mm on the front and the sides respectively. With the Krupp design, the Tiger Mouse being judged as the lesser of the two designs, it was terminated on the 15th of December 1942, with the Porsche design being selected, albeit with significant changes. Further design changes to the hull to accommodate the removal of the turret color and to allow for a tunnel for the driver and radio operator at the front to get to the turret without getting out were making the design process very difficult. Even as these design changes and other minor changes were discussed, a decision was made on production, with Hitler meeting with Albert Speer on the 3rd of January 1943 and ordering the Mause to be produced between 3 manufacturers. The decision was taken so that Porsche would design it, Krupp would produce the armored sections, and Alket would assemble these components into a functional tank. Hitler was very adamant in that the production of the tank should be able to begin by the end of that year, and the deliverance of the Moschken to be at a rate of 10 tanks per month. With production delays caused by bombing, Krupp, seemingly without any warning, received orders on the 27th of October 1943 that instead of 120 vehicles, just one Mause was to be completed, and all of the unused armor plates were ordered to be transferred to the Sturmgeschütz program at Harker-Icon instead, excluding those that already are prepared to be used in the Mause construction. More bad news for Krupp followed, with the order to cancel further development of the tank and cancellation of the orders for series production of the turrets and hulls. On the 5th of November, another order clarified the situation, changing the initial batch for 6 prototype turrets to just 1, and a week later the contract for 6 prototypes hulls was changed to just 2. Now, with all the work cancelled, there seemed little point in finishing hull number 1, which still needed some machining work done, but was otherwise finished. So it was sent from Krupp to Alket on the 26th of September 1943, where it was fitted with the internal components and the drivetrain. The whole work was completed on the 22nd of December, and then it had been shipped to the testing grounds at Boblingen on the 10th of January 1944. When it left for Boblingen the next day via railway, the vehicle was able to move under its own power and load itself, but work on the hull was otherwise incomplete inside. The second Mause hull arrived at Alket on the 8th of January, but work stopped by the middle of the month, with the focus being put on the Sturmgeschütz assembly instead, and after about a fortnight of lying idle, it was decided to ship the partially assembled hull that was fitted with just the suspension and mechanical brakes to Boblingen for finishing the work. So, in the end, only 2 hulls and 1 turret were ever completed before the testing grounds were captured by the advancing Soviet forces, with an incomplete tank that was captured by the British forces. With these 2 prototypes, one with and one without turret, undergoing trials in late 1944. As a piece of engineering, the Mause tank is impressive in the challenges it created and the solutions it presented. However, the size, armor, and firepower were simply an extravagance Germany did not need and could ill afford in terms of money, time, and materials. There is no realistic consideration that the Mause, even if produced in numbers, could have affected in a substantial way a campaign or the war, and it is far more likely that the fate which awaited the single vehicles could have been the same as any other heavy tanks of the time, namely being abandoned when it ran out of fuel or broke down, and then being blown up by its own crew. And so, after all the German effort in the late year of the war, we have one Mause tank that is still around, preserved at Kubinca Museum, marking the top end of what the tank could really be in terms of armor, firepower during the Second World War. This is all for today. Thank you everyone for watching. If you liked this video, please don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell not to miss any further videos. See you in the next one.